But it's about rethinking, and realizing that we're moving into a new era. And that takes an understanding of the history of money and the legacy financial system and TradFi and that entire system that we've entrusted our financial lives to, right? And most of us have given it no thought. And so we get to this place where we start to think to ourselves, hold on a minute, I've just been working for the past 20, 30, maybe even 40 years. And now I'm starting to think to myself, how long is this going to go on for? Am I actually going to be able to retire in 10 or 12 years from now, or 15 years from now, whatever it might be? In Australia, the retirement age is 65. I'm not sure what it is where you are officially, Robin, but I think for most of the Western world, it's kind of considered that mid-60s is retirement age. But I think most people just have this false illusion as to what it's going to take to actually retire and to fund their retirement, and not only fund their retirement in a comfortable way, but also what is the very real prospect of retirees being able to leave a financial legacy for their family and their kids. So I know there's a bit to unpack there, Robin, but it's all about realizing that the old system is broken. Traditional superannuation is not keeping up with real inflation. And most people have no idea about that one very important fact. And once we get through that, we then talk about why Bitcoin is a solution. And for me, Bitcoin is front and center in the conversation for the simple reason that over the past 10 to 15 years since Bitcoin's been around, it has proven to be the best performing asset. And I don't like using or considering Bitcoin as an asset. Most people think of it as an asset. We know that it's actually a monetary transformation, a monetary revolution. It's actually a protocol. But let's say that it's an asset. When you compare it against all of the other assets and stores of value, what we've seen is that Bitcoin has outperformed everything, not by a small margin, but by multiples, something like 8 to 9 times over the past decade. And so for anybody who's sitting there starting to think to themselves, will I have enough in retirement? How do I change the trajectory of my financial future if I'm in my mid-40s, I'm in my early 50s? How do I do that before it's too late? Bitcoin is the very thing that I believe provides that opportunity.
I love your framing of the world is shifting, and I 100% believe that. But it's sometimes hard to see, like I think sometimes we are very strong into this Bitcoin bubble and we see all the problems with TradFi. But if I think about the average, like 45-year-old Austrian, or like even, it's probably the same around Australia and America and Canada, all like the Western Hemisphere, I would imagine the experience is quite the same, where they have been paying into a pension system that they might be confident that they might get back, or might be not confident that they get back, but their financial system mostly worked. So they have inflation, they're struggling to keep up with bills, but I'm not sure if everyone actually gets the connection that they're struggling and that inflation is one of the main problems of that. Maybe they blame the governments, maybe they blame their own company, the greedy corporations. Like there's so many things that like people like to blame, but actually I think there's only a small group of people that say like, hey, maybe it's the whole system, the financial system, that's actually broken, that like steals from me silently. So I'm 100% with you. I'm just like, I'm not sure how many people actually see that like the system is broken, not like greedy corporations take all the money from me. I don't like, when I talk with people that are frustrated in the 45 years and they're around that age, they usually blame it on everything except the monetary system, like if they are outside of the Bitcoin bubble. So I'm always curious how we get to the stage of like they are accepting that you first will not get a retirement that will be sufficient from the traditional financial system, except you are like really well earning and like you have a lot of savings yourselves, and like you basically have to care for your own pension at this point. Like and actually I see this more in the younger people, like under 30. The people say like, hey, I probably don't get a pension, so I have to care for it for myself. I even outside of Bitcoin, I see that. So I'm curious how you think how you think is the awareness of people that get to that stage of like, hey, how can I see Bitcoin as a solution versus the greedy corporations are not the thing that I should blame to?
Yeah, well, I think the greedy corporation is just a spin that, the powers that be put on it to kind of cover up the real problem. And, I think it was Milton Friedman, who was a prominent free market economist back in the 1970s. He won a Nobel Prize for his work. And he was the one that said way back then that inflation is not CPI, it's not consumer price index inflation, it's not the price of milk or bread or eggs going up by 30 or 40 cents per year. That's not real inflation. Inflation is taxation without legislation. And essentially what he was referring to was this phenomenon of money printing, currency debasement, and an understanding that if we are to save our time and energy in abstract form, which is our money, as Jack Mallers explains, and he's so right, when we go and exchange our time and energy, our labor, our intellectual skills, our capital, we create businesses, we do all of these things, we do it trusting that this thing that we'll receive in return, this currency, that it is going to hold its value. Okay, and this is the fundamental part that most people don't understand, because fundamentally most people just go to work and they blindly, because of the system we've been brought up in, we just blindly go and exchange our career, sometimes our entire lives, for this thing that we call money, not realizing that it's not actually real money. It's just a promise that is given to us by the central banks and by the governments that is going to be an adequate store of our time and energy in abstract form. And so if you circle back to Milton Friedman's definition of inflation, that inflation is taxation without legislation. Essentially what that speaks to is the reality that when central banks and governments are able to expand the money supply, effectively what they're doing is the same thing that they do when they increase your taxes, all right? Because they're diluting your purchasing power. But inflation is actually a sinister form of taxation, because it's one that we don't vote for, okay? It's one that we didn't have consensus among the people around. We just have to accept that this is the way things are. And so, back in the 70s, they had quite a high inflationary period, and things that then leveled out for a while. We know that Nixon broke the gold standard back in 1971. And if you zoom out and you look at a historical currency price chart, over the past 50 odd years, what you'll see is that the US dollar, the Australian dollar, virtually every other currency, but even if you just said the US dollar, which is the world reserve currency, the most powerful currency and the most stable currency, has lost something like 92 to 93% of its value since that time frame, since 1971, since we've had a currency that is backed essentially by nothing other than faith. And so, we can talk all day about the history of money and what led to central banking and how governments and central banks are able to, create currencies and why they do that inside the debt-based system. And probably today's not the day for that conversation, but I think we just have to understand that if we're saving in any form, be it in our day-to-day life, okay, albeit for retirement, we need to be thinking very, very seriously now about how we're storing that value, how we're storing that economic energy. And unfortunately, if you're to store it in euros or store it in US dollars or store it in Australian dollars, you're essentially committing financial suicide, right? Because you are enabling the system to work against you. You are enabling the system to dilute your purchasing power year after year after year after year. And the reason, and how does this manifest itself into our everyday lives that we can see? Well, I think probably the most obvious case, I mean, I've got three children in their 20s, three daughters, and one of them thankfully made it into the housing market, but the other two aren't in there yet. And most of their peers, most of their friends aren't even thinking about getting into the housing market, which once upon a time was the great Australian dream, right? Because that was the way to kind of build a solid foundation for your life. But what we've seen over the course of the past 50 years is that you can no longer buy a home today, for the most part, even with two incomes, and sometimes you need three incomes coming into a household, whereas 50 years ago, you could buy a median price, average Australian home with one income. Dad could go to work, mum could stay home, they could raise a couple of kids, create a lot of stability in their life. Now, I'm not saying that things were perfect back then. There was a whole other set of issues that every generation experiences. But when it comes to quality of life and being able to, you know, enjoy time and to be able to value time and to be able to come home from school and have afternoon tea, sometimes with, you know, one of your parents or things like that, which we can't do anymore, it's all due to the fact that our money system is broken and the currency that we have trusted essentially can no longer be trusted. So, you know, it's, I think with understanding all of this, Robin, it just takes time. And I think, you know, you and I both know it's all about, you know, listening to Bitcoin podcasts and reading books like Larry Lepard's book, The Big Print, watching Joe Bryan's video on YouTube. What's the problem? I mean, what's a 40-minute video? And so if anybody out there who's listening to this is feeling somewhat uneasy and just intuitively in your gut, if you feel like things aren't quite right, you can feel the world is shifting, but you can't quite put your finger on what it is, you need to go and spend some time studying some of these resources out there, and it'll just help you to understand a little more around you know, what drives this cost of living crisis, growing wealth gap, the fact that young people now, you know, they're giving up on the great Australian dream and the great American dream. There's a reason for that, and it all comes back to the fact that the currency that we have and that we function under, we can no longer trust it. It's broken, and so therefore, we need to be looking at a new system. We need to be looking at a new store of value to protect our time and energy in abstract form, to protect our money. And of course, that's what we're here to talk about today. That is Bitcoin.
I love that. And if someone watches this and they are just getting started out, I mean, if someone already has like 10 Bitcoin, I mean, it might be a different conversation, but if someone is just like now seeing this video and they're like, hey, like I want to start out from scratch, but I feel like Bitcoin at 100K is so high, like how can it be doing anything? What is your message to people that are getting started now with Bitcoin?
Very simple. Start low and grow. Start low and grow, right? Because the reality is, Robin, and I know you know this, but this is obviously for the viewers, Bitcoin, it'll do your head in. If you fixate on the price too much and you try to time a perfect entry point, or you look at a price chart and you see that Bitcoin's price in the past 12 months is down 4%, or Bitcoin's price over the last 30 days is down, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20%, something like that, it'll do your head in, and you'll get wrapped up in this mindset around volatility. But in doing so, it will cause you to miss out on what I believe is going to be the greatest wealth transfer of our lifetime. And what people really need to understand about Bitcoin is we've never seen anything like Bitcoin before. It's not like buying Amazon or Tesla or Nvidia. It's not like that. What Bitcoin actually is a monetary system, a new monetary system that is completely decentralized, meaning that no one entity, no one party controls it. Okay, it is permissionless, meaning that when you secure your savings in it, you don't need to consult with anyone in order to access it. There are no counterparties to your money, meaning that, again, you don't need permission from anyone. There's no oversight on what you actually have. Okay, there's nobody to tell you, as an example, that you've reached your limit today, right? And therefore you can't withdraw anymore, like we're seeing in Australia in the banks right now. So there's none of that with Bitcoin. And these are all kind of secondary features to Bitcoin that people realize a little later on. I mean, most people come to Bitcoin for one reason. They want number go up. They want to see their wealth in dollar terms increase. And that's okay. I mean, that is kind of what is going to happen during a transition. And that's where we are right now. We're still in this fiat mindset, this store of value phase. And most people who are coming to Bitcoin now, all they really care about is just seeing whatever they put into Bitcoin, seeing it grow and grow and grow. But the reality is that there's so much more to this than that. We have to understand that Bitcoin is fixed, finite. It is what's known as absolute scarcity. There is only 21 million Bitcoin as a hard cap. And most people that I talk to who are pretty new in their journey, they don't even realize that they can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. There's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. Okay, you can buy 1 million Satoshis right now today for around 1,300 Australian dollars. Okay, which is probably about, I don't know, 700 to 800 US dollars. 1 million Satoshis. Now that is a steal, that is a bargain in my mind when you understand where this is going. When you understand that one day, and I don't know when, but I am absolutely certain that one day, one Satoshi is going to be equal to $1, right? Now, it might not be in our lifetime. It could be in your lifetime, Robin, or it could be, you know, in our kids' or grandkids' lifetime, but it is going to happen. And the reason for that is because this scarcity, this finite monetary protocol is doing exactly what it's designed to do. It is absorbing all of the energy, all of the financial premium out of the infinite monetary system. So you've got a finite monetary system absorbing the financial premium and the financial energy out of the infinite monetary system. And it's just the law of economics. I mean, we all went to school, and in our first economics class, we remember this thing called supply and demand, right? We've got to remember that Bitcoin, there's limited supply. Hard cap, 21 million. We know that something like 97, 98% of it is already out there. It's already been mined. And so the issuance of Bitcoin for the next, 120 odd years is only something like 1.5 to 2 million Bitcoin. And so when you understand this and you realize that 8 billion people around the world very soon, particularly with AI coming and with inflation and basically guaranteed into the future, more and more people are going to soon realize they're going to have this light bulb moment where they're going to realize, I need to store my energy, my economic energy, in an incorruptible form of money. And this is where they're going to realize they're going to have that penny drop moment like you had and like I had and like thousands of other Bitcoiners around the world have had, where we realize, holy shit, We've been sold a lie. We can't trust money as we know it. The thing that we call money is not really money. We start learning about the history of money. We start learning about central banking. We start learning about the war machine and how wars are funded through fiat currency. And then once we understand all of that, we realize Bitcoin was put here for a reason.
The first thing that every Bitcoiner does, and the most important activity that every Bitcoiner keeps on doing, is buying Bitcoin. And I personally use Relay to buy and sometimes also spend or sell my Bitcoin. And there are two main reasons why I do so. The first one is it's Bitcoin only. They do not do any shit coins. They do not do any cryptos, any stocks or anything else. This is a tool, an app that is fully focused only and solely on Bitcoin. The second one is self-custody. They give you the keys to your Bitcoin the moment you buy them. You never give them the control over your Bitcoin, and you don't have to trust them because you can verify that you and only you have the keys to your Bitcoin. There's no third-party risk. There's no freezing of your assets. There's no rug pulling. There's nothing of that. Download Relay, the app, on your phone, or go to relay.app on your browser and use code Robin to save fees and get cheaper Bitcoin. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called micro seed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With micro seed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because MicroSeed is not selling the washer. MicroSeed is selling the device that stamps the washer. You get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today, and you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io.